compensate with it from the insights we share from Ajay sir. So without any ado, let me start by introducing Ajay sir. Dr. Ajay Kumar, he's the former, he needs no introduction as such. Is the former Defense Secretary of India, the 39th Defense Secretary of India, an IAS officer from the batch of 1985. And he did his BTech in electrical engineering from IIT Kanpur. He has earned a master's in applied economics and a PhD in business administration from University of Minnesota. In his entire illustrious career as a civil servant, he has served notable positions, multiple notable positions as the Principal Secretary to the Government of Kerala, as a Joint Secretary for Ministry of Electronics and IT, and the Director General of NIC, and that's where I got connected with him, and Additional Secretary of the Ministry of Electronics and IT Information Technology, as the Defense Production Secretary, and finally as the Defense Secretary of India. We are so proud to have him with us today in this webinar. Ajay sir, it's a great privilege for us and a great privilege for me personally to once again have learned something from you. I had a great learning working under you during the Digital India launch project, and my learning continues from that. And I also remember that you are the first person to call me up to ask me what are my next plans the day I hung my boot in the corporate sector. So I am deeply my deep gratitudes for all the love and love you have shown to all people who have worked under you. So let us straight away get into the discussion of today's what we have today. So this, as I briefed you, this community is a community which contributes to the business by writing business proposals. Okay, and when we say business proposals, not only writing the business proposals but also managing that entire life cycle of the bid, from the day the government publishes the RFP to the day the proposal is submitted to the government, and then thereafter answering all the clarifications and the questions to the government and the agencies till the time the contract is signed with the government. And as we understand that today, in today's scenario, when the Indian government is focusing on so many innovative solutions to empower the country's defense and security, and you have been at the helm of it with the IDX program, which you had been initiated, and which has actually provided such a big platform for not only the existing players in the market, in the manufacturing segment, in the defense manufacturing segment, but also the startups to connect with the defense establishments. And even few months back, our Raksha Mantri said that the government's target of achieving the defense exports is worth 5 billion by the year 2025. Now, in this whole play of economic growth and market capitalization, how do you see the value of a bid and proposal professional helping India in becoming a 5 trillion economy by 2025?
So, good evening, everyone. And thank you, Abhijit, first of all, for all the kind words that you said. And I remember our association when I was in METI very, very fondly, and the contributions you made to that effort also. It was really wonderful to have worked with you then. And, it's actually, IT has always been my first love, if one were to say. Of course, even in defense, people used to say that I brought IT to Ministry of Defense, and I never shied away from that. So, yeah, it's always good, and you have been doing a wonderful job with APMP. So, wish you all the very best for continued efforts in this direction, and I'm sure you'll make tremendous valuable contributions. So on this point of how could bid process writing could help in creating a 5 trillion economy. First of all, I want to say that the 5 trillion economy or the new economy that we are creating, it can only be done with an active public-private partnership. And any selection of private partner in a democratic process can only be through a bid process. And therefore, it is an essential part of this. Now, as we all know that any bid process, when you start with an RFP, you start with incomplete knowledge. You do not know the full range of contingencies that may arise, the variations that may arise in the completing whatever project it is. And therefore, there lies the ambiguity. So, first of all, it is important, and I think the pre-bid process is extremely important in this regard. And people who are interested in the particular project should help. Very often what happens is people in the government are not so well aware of all the details and nitty-gritty of the project. Very often those people are there on the job for a limited period of time. They are not experts in the domain also at times. Whereas the people who are actually participating in the project are people who have done this in and out several times, and they know the project very well. So I think it is very important for the participants of the project, people who are interested in the project, to educate the whichever ministry, whichever officers who are initiating the bid proposal. They should educate them. And in most cases, I found people are receptive to such useful, positive, unbiased inputs. These inputs, obviously, you should not try to, bias the bid process in favor of one vendor or the other. These should be neutral, useful inputs, maintaining the fairness of the bid proposal. In my opinion, once the more clarity that we can bring in the RFP itself, the bid writing proposal will become more and more clearer. And then subsequent, clarification, the reasons why you go in for incessant delay in finalizing a bid proposal is that, there are no clarities, then people will ask questions later on. And then you realize that if you give a particular clarification, it will help vendor A, or if you don't give that clarification, it helps vendor B. And then that takes the whole process into a vicious cycle. So if that clarity can come, my own feeling is the bid process will be completed faster. Contracts can be, partners or contracts, whatever the case may be, can be selected faster. And this fast selection, whether it is in terms of development of infrastructure, doing an IT project, or any other project for that matter, we will find that the cycle of that will be faster. And I think that is something very important if we are looking at creating a 5 trillion economy. Remember, after all, government is a big procurer both in terms of projects as well as in terms of goods and services. Now, if 15-20% of the demand is with the government, and if we can increase the efficiency of the procurement process, this will definitely have a big impact on the economy and economic cycle. That's what I think.
Thank you so much, sir. I think, and in fact, you answered a part of the next question I had in my mind, is that you had been at the helm of buying decision making in the defense and in the IT sector and many other segments of the government procurement. So what has been your experience with the proposals which you have evaluated? May not be there read through end to end, but even maybe the executive summary, or even you have looked at some key components of the proposal. What has been your experience, and how do you think that the bid and the proposal managers who work on this proposal, they can improve the quality of the proposals and assist the decision makers in making more informed decision making, and in more informed decision making, as like what you said?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the most important thing is that we should not try to bias the proposal, thinking that it will, we can take advantage, because at some point of time, the competitor will definitely, make a counterclaim. In government, there are so many oversight mechanisms. So if, if there is any, even a slightest of feeling that there is some kind of a foul intention going in the bid process, one oversight mechanism or other will come into play and the bid process will get vitiated. So, one of the things I think, although we may say this very often, despite that we have found several occasions, and I'm not saying that people who do it with, but there is sometimes efforts to by, competing bidding parties that to, see if they will be having a slight advantage. I think that is something we can keep away with. Second is, I think, sometimes our own rules and regulations, which I know more about, are archaic. In defense, particularly, I found this, because defense does not follow GFR. It has its own GFR, or what we call as DAP and DPM. And while GFR has made some improvements over time, and because it is cross-cutting and many ministries involved, some improvements do take place. But in defense, we found that a lot of our DAP and DPM rules are today absolutely, archaic and needs revision. So I think it is also something for people who are regularly participating in government process. They should ensure that they sensitize the government people regarding how, wherever some improvement has come. Government is today in a reform mode, so some reforms have come. For example, earlier, bank guarantees would only be accepted from public sector banks. Now today, government said no, it doesn't matter, and it brings in that much more competition and ease of doing business. A lot of things can be now accepted on self-certification or third-party certification basis, rather than having to go for a certification from a particular government agency. So those kind of liberalizations or reforms have taken place. So if those have not been incorporated in that particular RFP process, that can be pointed out. If suppose some RFP has included some proprietary standards which is prohibiting some of our Indian companies to participate, I think that is something which I would encourage all people who are part of Indian vendors, and with Make in India so much of emphasis on it, yet sometimes the standards are such that the Indian make gets it's not so easy for them to participate. So those kind of things can be pointed out, and this will then once these are pointed out, this will help the process to to be faster.
Definitely, sir. These are great inputs and insights. Definitely for the teams which, and a large number of our teams actually, our members basically participate in the government bidding, not only in India, because the government bidding or the rules and the laws of government bidding more or less are the same across the country, across the globe, whether you are, and even with public sector agencies like the UN and so I think definitely this makes a lot of sense.
I have also found sometimes that people, they tend to submit not full details, especially in big projects. They will not submit full details and make some broad assumptions and give some broad figures. Now, again, the point which I made earlier, I mean, it is important to understand the details of the project, get that clarity upfront, and then submit the bid, because later on, very often when these broad estimates are given, etc., we find that the assumptions on which those broad estimates have been made are not exactly correct. And therefore, the whole bid process again gets vitiated, because people then are not able to perform, they're not able to, and then the whole cycle of revision, blacklisting, etc. starts, and that is not something which is very good.
Thank you, sir. And I think there is because having been on that other side and having dealt with government RFPs and proposals, the general mindset is that whatever it may be, at the end, it is the price that the government would look at. It is the L1. So whatever is the quality of the proposal doesn't matter. Nobody reads a proposal end to end. But with your clarification which you are giving, it means that government reads the RFP, reads the proposals, reads the answers to the proposals. So I think that's a very important takeaway for all our members here. Now, let us think of let us switch to a little different plane. Government today is looking at exporting, increasing its export, specifically in the defense market. In the IT services market, we have already established ourselves as a major exports player. And whenever we have to export or whenever we have to do a global business, the proposal management and bid management capability is a core capability for any organization. IT has recognized that, and IT has built up that capability. But somewhere in the other segments, we do not see that standardization or that skill or competency being recognized or being built in. What is your thought about it, that how important is to build that capability and that skill within the other sectors which are looking to play in the global marketplace?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very important point. And I think if you look at government efforts, export is a very big part of our growth of economy. And, while commodity exports may take place based on, various other kinds of sales and distribution channels, but a large number of items and projects, etc., will get sold based on competing on an RFP process and getting that orders. And, when we go see this whole issue of getting into details, which I mentioned earlier in the government process, is 5 times more amplified when you go for international global bid process, because there the emphasis on proper documentation, commitments, etc., are extremely, extremely important. So I think that skill set, if you are looking to participate in global process, is very important. Very often, our Indian companies, or even in India, we may not have had that competence. So IT sector developed that skill set consciously, and NASSCOM played a very important role in doing it at various point of times, I think. And each domain, each sector may have its own particular requirements. Defense, for example, I know setting up, creating the capability to export, and defense is very peculiar because it's a monopoly, and even buyers are mostly governments of the other countries, and in the government only the armed forces. But you have to go through the bid process, you have to follow it up. So I think this capability needs to be created. I have also found that it is much more easier to do this in smaller companies who are more agile, slightly less in bigger companies. This may be counterintuitive, but this has been our experience, that smaller companies are more agile and more willing to learn and more willing to adapt. Bigger companies, and extremely difficult in government companies. So, so this is the, but I think there is, if you are going to go global, and if you are, if you are looking to take advantage of PLI schemes, which government is coming out in one sector after another, if you are going, and if your customer in the other country is government, then bidding is something which is very, very important. So you have to learn that skill set. You have to be willing to, you have to be patient, you have to participate. And then you have to understand the laws of that land in which you are bidding. You have to understand international laws of trade, the WTO rules and regulations, financial rules and regulations for international trade. Each of this one will have to have great knowledge. So I think this is something which there is definitely great need for training and skill development, and I think it is to be mostly, it should be sector specific.
Great, sir. Great input, sir. And just to give you an update on that, we are already in the process of working with the National Skill Development Corporation in setting up, first initially to get into a understanding of how we can build this up, take this through the skill universities. We have already initiated that process, and that's something that we are already working as APMP India. We have already initiated that process. So hopefully we will be able to create more competencies and more skill sets in the entire ecosystem, so that it can help the community, the business community, the business system of India to raise its bar in terms of the proposals. Basically, our objective is to raise the bar in terms of the standards of the proposal which we submit. Because ultimately, when you submit a proposal, it is a representative of your country, it is a representative of your company, and it is a representative of your country. So with every proposal, the pride of the country also holds with it. And so that with that question, with that thing in mind, from your experience, and you have been so inspiring in all the work which you have been doing, and you have inspired so many in not only in the civil services but in the civil society itself. How do you think a bid manager or a proposal manager can stay motivated at work, because he is fighting every day his battles within the organization and wars in the competitive market outside? How can he still stay motivated and keep the nation first thought in mind and in his action?
Yeah, I'm sure, I mean, like any other job, and I am not I don't think I am possibly the best person to be able to answer. Each one of you who are working the field possibly will have much better insights into this. But I think one is, success is something which motivates more than anything else. So every time you do a good bid and results in success for your company, there is nothing more motivating than that. I think the second part of it is bid managers become extremely knowledgeable about the project and knowledgeable about the competition in that project. And to be able to share that knowledge within your own organization, to educate those people, I think that is another great, sense of satisfaction that one can derive from the whole because I don't think there is anyone who knows the project as well as a person who is actually part of the bid management process. So he knows the industry, he knows the project details, he knows he should have a great understanding both financial as well as technical issues. So this would also be a fair amount of this thing. But I'm sure those people who are working this would possibly be much better to be able to say on this. So, we on this side of the table, we possibly just are looking at, why has the bids not come, or why not enough number of bids, etc. But there's a whole lot of work that goes on behind it.
Definitely, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely, sir. So coming to the point, as a defense secretary, as a defense production secretary, you are so closely associated with at the ground level. We have been seeing your LinkedIn posts, whether it is with the people at the ground level. Any inspiring story you would like to share because those real warriors at the ground level, they are also fighting we are fighting within our, whatever fight we have within our organizations, within the marketplace, but they are the real heroes, and you have been closely associated and worked with those real heroes. Any inspiring story you would like us to remember, that when we are working on a bid and we are challenged, we can remember that story and say that, okay, I will do it. I can do it. I will do it.
So I think this is a story which is kind of, again, this has a strong government perspective. But recently we awarded, and I'm sure several of you who are tracking defense must have seen, the project for manufacturing of C-295 transport aircrafts was awarded to Tata's and Airbus. It's a 25,000 crore project, and it's the biggest project which has been awarded in the private sector. In defense, we have often seen that there is, some reluctance to give big projects to, private sector. That has been a mindset problem in the government for a long time. This particular project, the bid process had started sometime in 2010 or so, or maybe 10, 12. I'm forgetting the dates. I may be a little off, but it was about 6 to 8 or 10 years back. And of course, defense projects take time. Bids are big, very detailed project. There was a huge the biggest ever Make in India component as part of it. In fact, the C295 plane, which will be made, will have the highest, more than 80% of what Airbus used to do in Spain will now be done in the Tata's factory, or with the, there are 300-400 vendors which have been identified who will be doing it. Basically, it will be done in India. So basically, the plane will be made in India, except things which will be imported as far as some, like engines and all. What Airbus does not do, obviously, they cannot, do it in India either. So, this had gone through the whole usual process of EOI, RFP, bid management, testing, trial, everything, and it had come through all of that. But finally, when it came to giving the bid at the technical evaluation stage, the other competitors did not succeed. And this was the only bidder who was there, who was available. And therefore, the project was never finalized for several years. And we actually looked at the project. We looked at the merits of the project. We looked at the process. We looked at it from a, as clinical a perspective as an auditor would look on a future date. Mm-hmm. And we weighed, the advantages against the disadvantages. Like I said, it is, one of the greatest strengths is it is going to create a unprecedented aerospace manufacturing ecosystem in the country, in the private sector. Otherwise, today, the only people who can make fixed-wing airplanes is HAL. So, it is giving you at least 300-400 vendors who will be NADCAP certified, which is the global body which certifies, industry who can supply to global aero industry. It will create, large number of engineers for the first time will be certified by Airbus to be qualified to work in the global aerospace industry, and so on and so forth. Like I said, majority of the things will be done in India. We will have full right to export the planes that we make. Normally, this does not happen in many of the other contracts. For the first time, we had in this contract the provision that we can freely export, the unit from India can freely export these planes to other countries anywhere in the world from India without having to take permission from any other government, or the Airbus corporate, or from the, Spanish or French government. So when we weighed all this, we looked at the procedure, we then decided to take it forward. It was not an easy process. It was, but then having seen it, we took it to finance. Finance also looked at it very critically. And thereafter, we took it to the cabinet, and cabinet saw the wisdom of it, and this was approved. So, so the whole effort of something which was lying for nearly 4 or 5 years without decision, the process of being able to actually do this successfully from a government perspective was, I thought, a very satisfying feeling. Today, we see that plant coming up. We see that industry. Next 2-3 years, we will have great, it's one of the best transport planes in the world that will be manufactured out of India. It gives you a very satisfying feeling.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much for adding this new start. It's a new beginning for India. So it was 75 साल का अमृत महोत्सव में इससे बड़ी और कोई क्या हो सकती है, मतलब कि हम जहां नहीं थे आज वहां हैं. तो ये तो एक बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है हमारे सारे देश की. I would like to take a break over here and see over the audience questions. I see a lot of hands coming up. So let me open up if anybody has got any questions here. So 2 participants raised up their hands, and let's see. Okay, Kaushal Pathak, if you would like to ask any question, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, sir, 2 questions, very brief questions, because I belong to pricing from a bid management perspective. I just wanted to know what something about that project which you have, 751 project. 751, and the second question is, how does it feel to take delivery of first Rafale in 2019?
Well,
Mr. Rajnath.
two things. One is it was a nice feeling to have taken the delivery of first Rafale, and it was a very satisfying feeling. You giving the best fighter aircraft in the world for your Air Force. It was a great feeling, and to actually touch it, feel it, it was really nice. On the issue of 75I, I would not like to make a comment because that is something which is right now actively under consideration, and we do not want to talk about active contracts.
Sorry, sir. Sorry to ask that question. Sorry.
No, that's fine. No, that's perfectly fine for you to ask.
Any other question, please? If anybody has asked any question, please you can raise your hand and I can unmute you. Okay, let me. So from all your years of experience and working in such different areas, what would you like to share with a community of professionals who struggle to win business, who struggle to deliver value to their companies, but get very but when the deal is done, it is mostly somebody else taking the credit, and very few companies give them the credit, and and the entire team which actually works in the background doesn't get that sort of credit, and it is sort of demotivating, but still they have to continue doing that. So what would you like to give as an advice that how, or a advice or motivation to such a community?
So, I was also seeing, and there are a few questions on the Q&A icon, and I'm taking the cue to, try to answer some of them. And one of the question is saying that we are observing trend of large number of government organizations, PSUs, publishing tenders through GEM. Is it the future trend? If yes, what is the primary reason for this shift? Yes, this is the future trend. Our effort is that all tenders of all kinds and work tenders so far were not part of this. They may also become part of GEM, to come on GEM. One of the ideas is, I don't know if you see in certain parts of the country and in certain sectors, there are very unhealthy restrictive practices that are followed, and RFPs are issued to some limited number of bidders. There is outside the bid process, on paper everything looks fine, but outside the bid process, things are not transparent. One thing which GEM does is now opens up the field. You are not under any kind of coercion or threat from anyone. You can just submit your bid through the GEM portal, and we have found that this has resulted in greater competition as well as significant savings because there is greater competition. The bids that are received are more attractive. But I think in government, like I said, transparency is a very important thing. And that is happening. The second good part is also GEM is today looking more and more into payment. The vendors are getting payment on time. One of the reasons why government contracts often attract higher bids is that the payments is not certain, whether you'll get it immediately on completion of the contract or whether you'll get it after 2 months or 6 months or 12 months. So today, one of the functionalities in GEM is to make sure that the payment is paid on time, and those ministries or those departments or those organizations which delay it, they are, this is reviewed at higher levels all the time, and those cases which are delayed, answers are sought. So therefore, there is a conscious effort on the part of government to continuously get everyone on board GEM. It is a process. There are some peculiarities in certain tenders which limit the ability to do this very much. But yes, this is the trend, and this will likely to continue. The second point which is made is What is the best financial model for procurement, least cost based or QCBS? The advantages and disadvantages of reverse auction process. Yeah, I mean, first of all, there is no, depends on each case. Some places QCBS is definitely superior, especially when intangibles and qualitative aspects of assessment are involved. Some cases L1 is better. QCBS requires fair amount of capability in the bidder also. Not bidder, I mean the department or authority who's procuring, the procurer also. And we have often found that capability is lacking, and therefore QCBS bids tend to get messed up sometimes. But if the department has good understanding of what they're doing, if they can clearly lay out the parameters of QCBS, how will be the qualitative aspect be assessed, and everything is spelled out ex ante, so that there is no change once the bid process is done. Then for qualitative nature of things, when you're trying to engage a consultant, for example, where it is not something, whose quality is so important, then QCBS bids could be very useful. Reverse auction is now being resorted in government for several things, especially when you're looking at, selling out some resources. And I think the advantages of reverse auction, ultimately from government's point of view, or any person who's trying to sell, he's trying to use a method of disposal which gives him the maximum value. And therefore, it is felt that in certain situations, reverse auction is able to generate better response from the competition than going for a simple bidding process. Then a question: when is government to government system invoked, and by whom? Well, government to government system is invoked by the governments, and sometimes when there is not a situation where something proprietary is being bought and therefore no meaningful competition can be obtained, that is the time when most of the time government to government system is invoked. However, it is also true in some cases there are formal structures which pre-exist. For example, between US government and Indian government, the only way US government supplies defense equipment is to another government is through what they call is FMS system, foreign military sales, which is a government to government system. So there are such models also. Government to government are agreements between two sovereign governments, and there cannot be any rules between what two sovereign authorities decide to buy. So as long as it's a sovereign decision which has been taken by competent authority in the two countries, I think that is something which is part of the government's decision to do this. Let me just quickly try to answer some of the other questions that are there. What is the best? This I have done. Let me see. The screen is jumping. How does the offset program work? Well, offset program basically is an obligation which a foreign OEM has to fulfill, and that there are several ways which he can fulfill this offset obligation. Typically, the offset obligation is to the extent of 30% of the value of the foreign component of the contract. So if the total contract is 100 rupees, out of which 90 rupees is foreign component, then 30% of 90 rupees would be the offset component. What it means is that 30% of 90, that is about 27 rupees worth of goods and services, will be bought by the foreign OEM from India. Having said that, this number 30% can be, is subject to whatever is agreed between the two parties. And also, apart from merely buying goods and services, he can also provide technology, equipment, investment worth that value of offset. So this is very brief, the offset program. You can have a whole class. I do not want to, in interest of time, I don't know. But I want to make one point in offset is, look, offset was very important while we were importing. In the last 2 years, we have not made any major foreign procurement. Offset get attracted only if the procurement foreign component is more than 2,000 crores. So there has been no such foreign procurement in the last 2 years. So really speaking, offset is something which is now kind of declining, and may not have, but still the offset of the old programs, previous foreign imports, those are continuing. The value of such offsets is over $10 billion. So there is still fair amount of old offsets which are where their Indian industry can have opportunity to supply goods and services to foreign OEMs.
Thank you, sir, for answering all this, taking pain to answer this. I understand the value of your time. So only if you have your time in your calendar, please try to answer, or else we can always come back to you. And I know you will always be happy to.
No, in fact, I have another meeting to go to. So I would, but I would really want to thank you for this very useful and very, hopefully useful and relevant discussion today on this whole bid management process. I hope it has given some insights to people who were attending, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, sir. It was a great honor for us, a great pleasure for us, and we will keep coming back to you for your guidance in this. Thank you so much. Thank you all our participants.
Thank you, and namaskar.
Yeah.
Thank you.